In this chapter, we're going to be learning about the basic elements of planning and decision-making. Planning and decision-making have been laid out as the first function of management, but I've pointed out that decision-making happens in every one of the functions of management, but it's very important in this beginning planning stage. We can't set goals, create plans, without making decisions. And those decisions impact the actions we take as we move forward in our organization. I'm a big fan of looking at visuals, and I think this one is a good one to lay out the elements of planning. As we can see here, this whole visual shows us our strategic, tactical, and operational goals and plans. But I want this, it's kind of subdued, but it's the most important thing, and it ties back to what we've been learning about in previous chapters, the environmental context. So as you are planning and setting goals, we cannot ignore the environmental context within which we work. So going back to chapter 3, we have to understand what's going on in our general and our task, and as well as our internal environment, as we set out to create our goals and our mission statement. We can't expect to set a goal about growth if we're in a recession. At least we can, but that has to be aligned with what's going on in our environment. So we start here at the top with setting our organization's mission. Now, not every company sets a mission statement. But a mission is supposed to outline the purpose of your organization, the values, directions, what premise under which we're doing business. It's kind of a guiding principle. So we start with the mission of the organization, and from there, this is like step one, then we set our strategic goals, our tactical goals, and then our operational goals. As you can see, they flow down. Now, all these arrows, it might look confusing, but what's happening here is we set strategic goals, and from those goals, we set out a strategic plan. Those plans help us, along with the strategic goals, to set our next level of goals, which are tactical goals. And the same thing applies. Plans are put in place, and we set the operational goals. Ideally, our operational goals support our tactical goals. The tactical goals support the strategic goals, okay, all the way up to the top. But we find that first we have to know the context, the environmental context within which we're setting these goals. And then we start from the top with a mission statement, then strategic goals, tactical, and then operational. Now let's talk about the purpose of setting goals. Goals are a very important part of moving an organization forward. It can provide, well, it does provide guidance and unified direction. We set a goal, everyone knows, now it's made public, what it is we are trying to accomplish. So it does unify people towards that goal and provides that guidance to move us forward. It promotes good planning. So if we've set a goal, we have to set about now, how are we going to reach that goal? So we need to put a plan in place so that we can reach that goal. And remember, when we set goals, they should be SMART goals. So they should be specific and measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So it promotes good planning. It becomes a source of motivation. If you set a goal, are you reaching it? Are you striving for something to accomplish? And lastly, it's also allows us to evaluate how we're doing and invoke some controls. So we talked briefly about the control function, which we covered towards the end of class, but the control function ties us back to the beginning, which is the planning function. We plan, we set our goals, and decide how we're going to reach them. And then part of the control function is monitoring our progress along the way to see if we're making progress towards those goals. And if we need to modify, maybe it's a 10-year goal and the economy has changed or customers' tastes have changed. Technology has totally revamped the sector we're working in. So we might have to modify those goals in order to continue to align with our environment. But goals are very important, and these are the purpose of goals. Now, as an example, think about your education, right? Hopefully you have set a goal for education, and we know with a SMART goal, we would have a time frame. We would have, it would be specific. So you would know what degree you want to attain. You would know maybe if you're going to a four-year school, what four-year school you want to get into, when you want to be done with your education, all those things, maybe even a GPA goal. And if we break it down further to saying just the associate's degree, well, if I know long-term I want to get into Rutgers University, I know in their business school what they're looking for in terms of GPA, what I need to do to get in. Maybe I have a couple backup schools. So for my associate's degree, which is a little shorter in term, I'm going to have my goal be, when am I going to finish? So a time, and be specific what my GPA needs to be, what courses I need to take, and how I have to go about doing that. From this example, we can see how important it is to create specific SMART goals, and then it provides us with the guidance and the direction we need to move forward. It can promote good planning, because if we have to keep our GPA at a certain level, or we want to finish at a certain time, with some of the business schools, you can't enter the business school in January. So knowing that, September is when you can start in a four-year business school, then that might modify how you take your classes so that you're not graduating in December. Or it might make it so that you decide to go a little slower in attaining it because you know you need that extra time, and then you take fewer classes so you get higher grades, right? We can make these sorts of decisions along the way, and then we can evaluate how we're doing. Midway through, you say, all right, what's my GPA? How am I doing? Am I on track? What changes do I need to make to keep moving forward? Or in some circumstances, sometimes the goals actually need to change. I already made reference to SMART goals. I should have had this slide earlier. SMART goals are something I teach in lots of classes, so in my head I've been talking about this already this semester, but this is what SMART goals are. This is what SMART stands for. Any goals you set need to be specific. You have to be clear about what you want to accomplish. They need to be measurable. So it has to be quantifiable. How are we going to track our progress if our goal is vague? And I'll give you an example. It has to be attainable. Is it something we can do? And this might have to do with the time frame we've chosen as well. Like, we can sometimes accomplish anything given enough time, right? But when we set out a SMART goal, is it something we can attain? Is it realistic? If I work hard, can I attain it? Can I actually do it? And then lastly, it needs to be timely. You need a time frame. You need due dates for milestones. This is one of the things that helps motivate people, is when there is a time frame. It gets people to get the work done. So for instance, I want to be healthier. Is that a SMART goal? While it might be a good goal to have, it's not really SMART in terms of these criteria. It's not specific. What does that mean? What does it mean to be healthy? It could mean something different to me than it means to anybody else. It could mean I want to be able to walk up a flight of stairs without being winded. Or it could mean I want to get my blood pressure under control. I want to lose weight. I want to eat healthier. I want to be more flexible. So you need to be specific. And it also needs to be measurable. How am I measuring if I am healthier, right? So we need to be specific and measurable. So taking that goal of being healthier and making it specific and measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, we could say, I would like to lose 10 pounds in 2 months. That gives us our time frame. That is something that is attainable and realistic. It is measurable. We can see if we're actually doing that. And it's specific. A different type of health goal might be, I want to I don't know if you say increase or decrease my BMI, your body mass index, or, how much muscle you have. That's something you can measure, right? And you can give yourself time, and you can set smaller goals in order to achieve those goals. So any goal you set, whether it is for your organization or for your personal life, you really should think in terms of these criteria of being specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So when we set goals for an organization, we have these different types of goals that we set. We sometimes set them by level. So we have mission statements and strategic goals are set by top management. Tactical goals are typically set by middle managers, and operational goals are set by first line managers. So the level of management also determines the type of goal we're setting. We also set them by area. So we don't just have goals for the overall organization. We're going to have individual goals in operations, in marketing, in finance, and in production. And then we also have goals by time frame, long-term, intermediate goals, and short-term goals. So if you think of the college has several different academic areas as well as like workforce areas too. So each of our academic areas, for instance, the Business and Public Service Department sets goals that they're reaching. So that would be by area. Individual professors might set goals for their courses, which would be short term, right? And then we also have goals that are set by, the president and the executive team. So those are the strategic goals of the college. So these are the different types of goals we can set in an organization. And again, they can be by the level of management, by the area, the functional area, and also in regards to time frame. This is from the book, and it is showing some examples of different types of goals by level. And we can see here at the top, we have our mission statement. This is for a fast food chain. And you can see we start with strategic goals, which is set by top management, providing a 14% return to investors for at least 10 years. So a 14% return is a very broad goal. It is encompassing the entire company. They're specifying a long-term time frame, but even without that 10-year piece, we know that it's applying across the organization. Another one they put here is to start or purchase a new restaurant chain within 5 years, and then negotiating new labor contracts. So that covers the entire organization. Strategic goals and the mission for the organization are set by top management and sometimes the board of directors, or in conjunction with the board of directors. At a nonprofit, that would be a board of trustees as opposed to a board of directors. As we move down to the tactical goals, these tend to be more narrow in scope. And as we can see, they're broken down by the different areas. So we have finance, marketing, and operations. Right here, it's mentioning vice presidents at this level. You can think of tactical goals as being set by, in conjunction with maybe top managers, but middle managers. So we can think of this more as the middle management level. And they're going to be more narrow in scope. So it's under vice president for operations. These are just goals for the operational area of the business. And they tend to be a little shorter in time frame. We can see some examples here for operations, for marketing, and for finance. Then as we go down to the operational goals, those goals are set primarily with first-line managers, but in conjunction with the middle management, because there has to be this continuity throughout the organization where the goals don't conflict with other areas' goals, like with other levels. So these goals, the operational goals, again, are in specific areas. So under operations, we have a restaurant manager. Under marketing, we have an advertising director. And under finance, we have an accounting manager. And these are going to be short-term in nature. They're going to be less than a year, and they're going to be put into place by those first-line managers. Let's look at the different types of plans. Here's a little bit of an overview. So we have at the top here strategic plans, as I said before, typically set by top management. These are the broadest set of plans, and their time frame tends to be 5 years or more. Then as we move down, we have tactical plans, typically set by and for middle management. These are smaller in scale. They're used to implement the strategy that was set above, maybe in a specific functional area of the business like marketing or operations, and they typically have a 1 to 5 year period. Moving down again, we have our operational plans. This is usually set by first line management. They're designed to implement the tactical plans that were set above them. They're typically 1 year or less, and the easiest way to tell if something is an operational plan is its time frame, and is it very specific in how you're accomplishing a specific objective. And then at the bottom we have contingency plans. These are alternative courses of actions. So if you've ever tried to plan an outdoor party, you always have to have a contingency plan, right? Because if the weather doesn't cooperate, what are you going to do? Just not have the party? So your contingency plan for a party might be to move it indoors, have a rain date, or maybe even put up a tent. So those are just some examples of contingency plans. Now, the way I like to describe this if I was in person with you is I would show you an image of using my hands, but we'll just draw it on here. As you can see, strategic plans at the top are very broad, covering the entire organization. And as we move down through tactical plans and operational plans, they become more narrow in scope and shorter in time frame. Visual for looking at planning, and these are the different time dimensions of planning. Our long range, which are strategic plans, 5 or more years. Our intermediate range plans are tactical plans, in other words, which are 1 to 5 years. And again, our short range plans, a year or less, which are our operational plans. Look more closely at operational plans. We have 2 basic types of operational plans: single-use plans and standing plans. Single-use plans are developed to carry out a course of action that isn't likely to be repeated in the future. It is a one-time deal. We're only doing it once. The different types of single-use plans, a program is for a large set of activities, and a project has a smaller scope and is less complex than a program. Our standing plans are used over and over again, maybe unlimited amount of times, and they encompass policies, standard operating procedures, also known as SOPs, and rules and regulations. So a policy is a standing plan that lends itself to a general response to a given problem or situation that might occur. Okay, we are familiar with like a dress code could be a policy, a sick leave policy, a vacation policy. So it provides these general guidelines. Standard operating procedures, these lay out the steps that are followed under certain circumstances. So we might have standard operating procedures for making a return. When a customer comes into the store to return something, there might be a process, steps that need to be followed. If we think back to our example of McDonald's we've been looking at and fast food restaurants, there are probably, and there are definitely, standard operating procedures for everything in that restaurant. Making a hamburger, cooking fries, what temperature something has to be at, what do you do first, second, and third. And then lastly, we have rules and regulations. These describe exactly how certain things are to be carried out. So the difference between a policy and rules and regulations is discretion. So a policy is a general guideline, and the manager may have some discretion in how it is carried out. Rules and regulations, these are going to be specific, and a manager would not have the ability to change it or to modify it or have that discretion to do it differently. Let's look at a few examples. This is an example of a return policy. So we have a policy that allows us to accept customer returns. There might be a rule that there are no returns over $50 without a manager's signature. And then we have a step-by-step process outlined for how we handle these returns. When my kids were little, we bought a lot of things at Toys R Us, and if you had to go back with a return, I would actually see them pull out sometimes the procedure if someone was new, so that they did it in the right order. You know, they had a clipboard with the form you had to fill out ready to go. They would hand it to you, and you'd have to fill this out before they took you to the next step. If you didn't have a receipt, it was handled one way. And typically with return policies, if you don't have a receipt, you can't, and that's usually a rule also. If you don't have a receipt, you can't get cash back. It would be either put on your card, or it would be store credit, right? So that would be a rule that we wouldn't want to break. And so these are the three elements. A policy is general and guidelines, and we have some discretion. The rule would say where we do not have discretion, where I can't make up my own, modify it in any way. And then the procedures are how we do it. So let's talk about something that maybe you can relate to, college. You know, I have policies. I have plenty of policies in my classes. And, I don't accept late work. That's my policy. But I have discretion there. Certainly there might be a rule in my class might be that I can't accept work after a certain time because grades are already in, right? That might be a rule. But as the semester is progressing, I have the discretion to change my policies at any time, right? I try to be very consistent. I'll give you another good example. I do allow extra credit in my class if I see that there's some sort of presentation on campus that I think my students would benefit from. I will give people credit for attending it and writing a 1-page or so reflection on, what you learned, what you liked and didn't like, and I'll offer that as extra credit. One of the things I will not do, so for me, this is a rule, I will not offer individual extra credit to students. I don't feel it's fair. So someone comes to me midway or at the end of the semester and they say, oh, can you give me another assignment to do? The answer is always going to be no. I give extra credit for everyone to take advantage of. And you don't have to take advantage of it, but I'm not going to do individual extra credit. School policies, you can retake a course. I don't know where it's at now, but I think you can retake a course twice without having to get permission, and a third time. So say you failed it the first time, you withdrew, well, we won't say withdrawn. You got a D the second time. Can you take it a third time so that you can get a better grade for your GPA? You're going to be limited, but you can always ask to see if you can take it an additional time. And someone might say, okay, you can. A rule would be at the college that you can't get your degree without having a certain GPA. So you can't graduate with less than a 2.0. So what kind of discretion would an administrator have there? Well, they might choose to remove something. They could remove something from your transcript. You can always ask, right? So I want to make sure we understand that a policy is general. Managers tend to have discretion in carrying them out because they provide guidelines. Rules, there can be no exceptions to. You don't have discretion to change it. Certainly the manager doesn't, perhaps someone above them can. And then our procedure are the steps we take. I hope at this point in the chapter, you are recognizing how important goal setting and planning is. But it's not always easy, and there are some major barriers we might come across in setting effective goals. And what's important is to recognize them so that we can effectively overcome them and set goals and put plans in place that move us forward and are effective. So the first one we can talk about are inappropriate goals. As an example, a public company. So a public company is one that you can buy stock in. It might make a decision to pay large dividends to its owners. Well, what that means is the company has profits, and those profits, instead of being reinvested in the company, are being paid out to the owners. That might be an inappropriate goal to set if your company is maybe new and needs to grow in order to compete, or you're a company that needs to invest in research and development. Instead of that money going into fund the necessary research and development for the company to grow, you are paying it out. And that's an inappropriate goal. We've set something that isn't helping the overall company. Other barriers to goal setting are an improper reward system. We want to make sure we're not rewarding the wrong things. I always give the example of the budgeting process. So when you set up a budget, you are trying to anticipate what kinds of expenses you're going to have in a given year, and we might want to cut back our costs. But if we set a reward system that says anyone that comes in under budget is going to get some sort of bonus, well, the easiest way to make sure you come in under budget would be to inflate your budget, right? So you might have someone who does a very good job on their budget, and it's, they've been cautious about what they included. They really did their research, and they could go over budget by a very small amount. And they're going to be more or less punished because they won't get that bonus. But we could have someone who is spending a lot more money and more reckless with their money, but they've inflated their budget and they're easily coming in under budget and they're rewarded. So we want to make sure when we come up with reward systems, we're not rewarding the wrong thing. I'll give you another example. When I was in college, I did a co-op, and I worked for a financial planner. And one of the things I was tasked with was making cold calls to people. I guess they weren't technically cold calls because we had their name from them attending something, but I was trying to get them to schedule a time to come in and meet personally with the financial planner. So if he had set up a reward system where it was about how many phone calls I made, I could probably make a lot of money by making very short phone calls, just calling them, logging that I called them, and who cares if I get them signed up to come in? I'm getting paid per phone call. So that's an improper reward system. Rewarding me for being able to get them to schedule an appointment would be more appropriate. Hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. Sometimes people are reluctant to set goals because the environment is dynamic and complex, meaning it's changing all the time and there's lots of moving parts. So I'm not going to set goals because by tomorrow it could be completely different. So just because it's difficult to set goals doesn't mean we shouldn't still set them, but those goals need to be flexible. The next two, reluctance to establish goals, kind of goes with this resistance to change. Goals mean we are setting something that we have to reach, or we plan to reach or achieve, which usually means if we're setting a goal, we got to change our behavior to get there. Right? And a lot of people are resistant to change. A lot of people are reluctant to establish goals because they don't want to look bad if they don't reach them. They might be resistant to set anything that might actually force them to work harder or to have to do something different. And lastly, there are constraints. When we talk about constraints, there are things that limit our ability to do things. And sometimes it can make it very difficult to set goals. But again, it doesn't mean we don't set them anyway. So how can we overcome these barriers? Well, understanding the whole purpose of goals and planning is important. Yes, we might have a dynamic and complex environment that makes goal setting hard, but if we understand that it will unify everyone towards working towards those goals, motivate people, and allow us to check our progress, we set goals that will work in that environment. Communication and participation is extremely important. We need to talk to people and explain what it is we're trying to accomplish. Get people to participate in the process so that there's more buy-in when someone has a voice in something. We need to be consistent, revise and update as we go so that our goals and our plans align with our environment. And then again, effective reward systems. And we're going to learn about how how people react to things, and we have to be able to be flexible, because we might establish something that in the room of people that we're making these decisions in, we might think it's going to be great, and then when we put it into practice, people might not relate to it the way we expected, and we might have to make a change. Lastly, let's wrap up by talking about management by objectives, MBO. This is a formal goal-setting process where goals are collaboratively set between managers and subordinates. This gets that participation in the goal-setting process. So you're not just dictating to your subordinates, your employees, what their goals are going to be for the next year. You work collaboratively with them so that they are part of that process. And then evaluation and rewards are based on how the subordinate does. So hopefully the goals being set are things that subordinates feel good about, want to achieve, and have buy-in, actually are going to work towards and achieve. Here at the college, for faculty, we have this type of system set up where each year we have to set out our personal or a professional growth plan. So what is it we're going to be doing this coming year to develop and to either strengthen our teaching, become more involved within the college, or professionally develop. And because we set them in collaboration with our department chairs and maybe our dean, we're going to be held accountable for those. So when the evaluation process comes each year for whether you get reappointed or get promoted or get tenure, you look back at what did you say you were going to do and did you achieve it? And you are rewarded accordingly. So hopefully this chapter has given you a good foundation of the different types of plans and goals that we set. And in the next chapter, we'll dive a little deeper into the strategic issues.